Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play the entirety of this video and then I'll go back and talk about things that are going on to better explain what's going on and talk about things that I think that were done right and or done wrong. Without further ado, here we go.
My name is Mariah Medina. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for the San Antonio Police Department. This critical incident video release is intended to provide you with information as the department currently understands it about an officer-involved shooting that occurred in the 4500 block of North Loop 1604 West on September 12th. San Antonio Police Lieutenant Jesse Salome will walk you through body-worn camera video relevant to the facts of this incident as we know them so far. Content of this video may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Officers were working traffic control following a major crash along the Loop 1604 access road when they were flagged down by a security guard of a nearby shopping center. The security guard informed officers there were people in the back of the crowded parking lot firing guns.
Okay, guys, guns in the parking lot. My officers are asking for backup. What's your location? Where you at right now?
And 17.
As officers searched for the scene, witnesses pointed officers to the back parking lot.
In the back, they're yelling in the back.
While going towards the back of the parking lot, officers heard rapid gunfire and saw a silver Mercedes traveling at a high rate of speed through a crowd of people.
Shot fire, shot fire, shot fire, shot fire, shot fire!
Two officers running towards the vehicle observed at least one occupant of the vehicle shooting, and both officers returned fire. A security guard also opened fire.
Shots fired!
Here is another view of the incident from another officer's body camera.
Shots fired, shots fired!
Shortly after the shooting, a bystander who took cover in a vehicle when the gunfire erupted reported being shot in the shoulder. While it's unclear whose bullet struck the bystander, a witness who was with the bystander stated that the car windshield had been shot through shortly after the actors in the silver Mercedes had opened fire. The victim was taken to an area hospital and was later released. The suspects have not yet been identified. Anyone with information on their identities or the shooting is urged to contact the San Antonio Police Department's Homicide Unit at 210-207-7635.
Investigations into deadly force are comprehensive and can take over a year. A reminder, this is our current understanding of the situation and could change as investigators gather more information. The San Antonio Police Department does not make any determination as to whether procedures were followed until all facts are known. All officer-involved shootings are forwarded to the Bexar County District Attorney's Office for review. As of this publication, the investigation remains ongoing.
Try to get the license plate of the hit and run car, or no? I don't think so.
Hey, anybody see the? Anybody get the LP of the hit and run?
Nobody got the LP of the hit and run. Everybody was walking in the vehicle.
Okay, guys, guns in the parking lot. My officers are asking for backup. What's your location? Where you at right now?
And 17.
In the back, they're yelling in the back. Shot fire, shot fire, shot fire, shot fire, shot fire!
Shots fired! Officers involved, shots fired!
Shots fired, shots fired.
Officers involved, shots fired!
It's gonna be a gray.
Passenger. Front right passenger.
All right, let's get into it. We'll go to the unnarrated part.
Everybody is walking in a vehicle.
So where they're at, they're in the middle of the highway, and the location that this is occurring at, excuse me, is a large shopping center type of complex that has multiple businesses and a few different bars, nightclubs located inside of it. From the body camera view, you can't see a whole lot of the place. What you can see are vehicles parked in the grass.
Got guys with guns in the parking lot. My officers are asking for backup.
And then when they get up here, you see more vehicles parked in the grass.
In the back. In the back.
And then a relatively full looking parking lot.
In the back.
And then this large structure here. So the body camera doesn't really give you, I guess, a really good idea about the size and scale of this place, or even what it is. When I first saw it, I thought that what this was a hotel. Just the size of it and the big neon, kind of, not neon signs, but the big lighted signs on it. And then this big fenced in thing made me just kind of think there was a hotel. Because there are some hotels out there that have like a bar attached to it, and it's like the local watering hole. And there's usually a bunch of stupid shenanigans that go on there. But that's not the case. It's a big shopping center. And I'll go to Google Earth to show you what that looks like. Here is the overlay, or the overview. The officers were right around in here. There's a sign, that sign you saw in the background. They're at this intersection right here. And when the officer takes off on foot, he runs through here, starts to go here, and then goes down this way. So this is a very large shopping center. And it has a pretty sizable parking lot. And there were vehicles parked in this kind of grass area. So there are a lot of people here. And when you zoom in, there's a place called Pix Bar, and there's a place called Anchor Bar. There's also something at the corner here, DZIR Nightclub. Let's go into Street View. Tell you what, drop that off. Well, we'll go into it here. So this is the front of the shopping center, and it's quite sizable. The burn house location is here. There's actually another entrance for it to the back of the building. This place right here is Anchor Bar. I don't know if the two are related in any way or what, but there is a outside patio kind of setting here. And then I've seen advertisements for rooftop bar, and I think that's what this is up here. It's just a place for people to drink on the roof. Now, in the video, this is what we see on the other side of the officer going around at. I don't really know what this caged in thing is. I have no idea what it is. It just looks like a little grassy area with really tall fence. I have no idea what it's meant for. But down over there is where the car accident was. So that officer ran through there, went over here, and then started to come up through here. So you can see that same wall. It's just a mesh wire type of design with a bunch of ballast inside of it. It's actually kind of cool. But you can make out that it's the same wall. I would say that the shooting probably occurred I'd say that vehicle was probably parked right about in here. And this right in here was where the shooting occurred at. You see the kegs from a bar. I'll go over here. A little too far. So this is what appears to be the back entrance for Burn House, or it could be the main entrance. I'm not really sure. And then, interestingly enough, there's a place right next to it called Alamo Tactical, and it makes me wonder if the security they have, there's a connection between security and this. I don't know. I have no idea if there is or not, but I found it interesting, and I tried to do a search on them, but I didn't find much of anything. And here you see more of what looks like that kind of rooftop kind of thing going on. I've seen video from another source. Looked like people taking video from up above, and security was down here patting people down before they went up, and there's like a whole line of people in this walkway right here. So this is a better view and a better idea of what the area looks like during daytime versus what you can see in the body camera, which you can't see a whole lot in the body camera. So I'll go back to the video. All right. So there appears to be someone in a uniform down here.
In the back. They're yelling in the back. In the back. In the back. They're yelling.
You can see the light from a flashlight hitting the ground.
In the back.
It's supposed to be 2 o'clock in the morning, so it's possible that this is closing time for the bar. Not really sure what the laws are in that area and if they have to close their bars at 2, but with all the people leaving, I'd say that's a pretty good guess that it's closing time. I believe this is the same security officer that came up to him in the roadway.
Shot fire! Shot fire! Shot fire!
The security officer takes off down this way,
Shot fire! Shot fire!
and then the officer is mostly bent over or hunched over at this point, and the camera's kind of facing downwards, and we really don't don't get to see much from his angle anymore.
Shots fired! Officers involved, shots fired!
We see more from this officer's perspective. Between the running and the shaking of the camera and his arm being in front of it and it being low light, we don't get to see terribly too much of this incident. What I will say, alright, so this officer takes this route down here and he ends up around this vehicle. I think that was the better route to take as he's going towards this incident, because this provides some form of cover. The other officer and the security officer being on this side over here, there's no cover out in the open here, and I think this approaching from this side would be a lot better, a lot more advantageous. Now there's quite a few vehicles that are just like parked in the, it's not a roadway, but more or less the driveway, places where they shouldn't be parking at. And obviously this damn car shouldn't be parking here because of this red painted line indicating that it's a fire lane. We see another vehicle at the beginning of the other officer's camera. We see vehicle parked there. And I wouldn't be surprised if these vehicles were parked here and these people just decided to get in them. So seeing cars randomly parked like this, just, in spots where it's not a normal parking spot, that even further indicates to me that there was a lot of people at this place. Now, they might not have been all inside this burn house place. It could have been spread out between it and the Anchor Bar and that nightclub thing on the very end. But there's a lot of people here.
Shot fired, shot fired, shot fired, shot fired, shot fired! Shots fired!
Now, I think it would have been best if this officer would have stuck with the other officer, because they ended up getting themselves into a situation where there could have been a really bad incident of friendly fire, because they've set themselves up in a crossfire situation. Yeah, I mean, that's as soon as this vehicle passes forward just a little bit more, ding, 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 they are able to light each other up in crossfire. And luckily, nothing happened, but there is that possibility still that it could have happened. So I think it would have been better if they would have stuck closer to each other. That way, you can avoid a crossfire kind of scenario. All of them fire, and I don't believe that anybody from this vehicle has gone to a hospital yet. If they did, they probably went to a hospital further away from here. Because usually that's how people end up getting caught after these kind of shootings, when they don't get caught there at the scene, is they show up to an hospital for their gunshot wounds. And then, of course, hospitals automatically report to police about those gunshot wounds, and they come sniffing around, and, well, lo and behold, that's how people get caught for things. The only person, excuse me, the only person to be shot in this incident was a person taking cover in their car. Now, it doesn't specify where they were at. It could have been someone back here in this car. It could have been someone in these cars over here. It doesn't really specify any further than a woman was taking cover in her car and she got hit. And it doesn't even specify who she was hit by. It says that it's unclear whose bullet hit her. So we don't know if it's a bullet from the police, a bullet from the security, or a bullet from the people in the car shooting at the police. This is not the first time that people at this place have shot at people. Earlier this year, a news article shows that there was a shooting, I want to say back in June or July. I'll bring it up real quick. Back in July. 2 people have been caught for that. They've been charged. And it was at this Burn House nightclub. Security guard said he was pointing his flashlight at Cheney and Pleasance, who were driving recklessly in the parking lot of the nightclub. Police said the security guard was hit by their car. Other security guards ran toward the car as they were attempting to leave the scene. Cheney attempted to drive forward, and that's when one of the security guards fired shots at him. Police say the security guard was found with a bullet lodged in his ballistics vest. Officials later determined that Pleasance had fired shots at the security guard. The 2 drove off, but were quickly found by police later on. The Cheney guy was found with multiple gunshot wounds and taken to the hospital, and the other guy taken into custody. Since there's multiple businesses there, it's not always that that you'll be able to easily find news articles and stuff. I tried to do a quick search on the Burn House place. Not a whole lot popped up. And then the other places I didn't do a search on. Sometimes when news articles come out, they don't mention the name of the business. They'll just mention the address or something like that. And trying to do a bunch of different searches on the different names and then the address, stuff like that. I didn't do it, and it's kind of time consuming. But based off this incident and the fact that another incident kind of similar to this occurred where people were shooting at uniformed people, I would be willing to bet that there's been more stuff that has occurred at this property. The police are probably very familiar with this property and probably know the name or the location very well, and I wouldn't be surprised if they have headaches from time to time dealing with that place. With that being said, these officers were initially in the roadway, and
Anybody see the? Anybody get the
likely
LP of the hit and run?
near their vehicles. That being the vehicle right there. When the security officer came over and told them that they needed help, I think that it would have been in their best interest to go ahead and grab a rifle and head over there. If there has been an instance before where there's been gunfire over there and the police have had to respond to this property multiple times, and you're dealing with people who are under the influence, and multiple people there who in the past have not made the greatest decisions and have had to require the presence of police on multiple occasions, then I think it would be tactically smart to go ahead and grab a rifle, because you never know what's going to pop off. And if one of them had had a rifle, I firmly believe that the outcome in this would have been way different. I think if he had a rifle and he was able to start putting rounds at the guy who was shooting out the window here, that he definitely would have pegged that guy, and the threat would have been ended a lot sooner. Rifles are a lot more devastating than pistols are, and rifles stop fights a lot faster. There's a lot more people who've got up and walked away after being shot with a pistol than there are people who've got up and walked away after being shot with a rifle. There are some people who have got up and walked away from being shot with a rifle, but not that many. Not much else to say about the tactics of this shooting, or anything with the shooting itself. I think that obviously this dude shooting at him, he's shot at other people. They brought it upon themselves, and the police acted accordingly. They used the right amount of force. They used the correct force. Don't believe they violated anyone's rights. The only thing that I have to say negative is the fact that they're on two separate sides, and that ended up creating a crossfire kind of issue. And they're lucky that none of them got hit as they were shooting at this car that then went in between the two of them. But that could have happened. And anytime there's friendly fire, it's never friendly. And when it comes to police shooting their own, it happens more than what you think. And when it happens, I think it kind of erodes a little bit of the trust in the public. Because I think that the public has this general feeling that the police are very well trained and they're really good with guns. And then when they see in the news that the police have shot one of their own, I think that brings their level of trust down a little bit, or their faith, and makes them maybe feel a little bit less safer. And then, of course, in-house for the agency, I mean, that could be a big demoralizer for the person who ended up shooting the other person. I couldn't even, begin to imagine the mental anguish that a person would go through after having shot one of their own teammates. So, if you can avoid crossfire, by all means, avoid it as much as you can. And in situations like this where you're each on one side of the road and there's a potential for the threat to come in between you, you can avoid that by everyone sticking to one side of the road. But yeah, that's it for the shooting part. Now, I kind of wanted to talk about security.
It's going to be a great.
Alright, so security rolls up too. Now, nightclub security and bar security. That could almost be a whole video in of itself, but I'll contain it to this one, and I'll kind of speak briefly on it. Bars and nightclubs. So, obviously, there's different types of bars and nightclubs with different clientele and different atmospheres. Some bars, they can get away with just having one bouncer, because the people who come there, they're pretty chill, they're pretty relaxed, and there's not a whole lot of stupid people that come there. And even if there was, the crowd that's there can kind of deal with them, and they have a bouncer there that can do a pretty good job of keeping the thing under control. But usually it's, the establishment itself that kind of brings order. So some bars can have one bouncer or one security guard, and others may require 10 of them. It just really depends on the venue and who the clientele is. When it comes to security, there's two types of security. There is the unarmed bouncer roadhouse kind of security, where it's just dudes wearing t-shirts or polos. And then there's the uniformed armed security, like this guy that you see right here. With the unarmed security, dudes wearing t-shirts and polos, that I think is kind of more of the norm, what most people would associate with bar security, your typical bouncer. College bars, most sports bars and dive bars and, biker bars and places like that, you're typically going to run across the unarmed security version of security, bouncers. And they're mostly going to be hired in-house. So the bar will hire them directly, just like they would hire a bartender. When it comes to the armed uniform security, those are mostly from a company that the bar hires to do those functions. You can have some bars that will hire directly and have their own people like this, but I think the most of it is going to be from a company standpoint. With your bars that have the unarmed bouncers and then your bars that use these type of security, some of the practices or concepts for managing the security on the property is going to be the same. And I break that down to exterior control, entry control, and interior control. So the exterior of the property, that exterior can be existent upon whether or not that bar is actually situated on its own private property versus a bar that is in a downtown area and it has, storefronts to each side and a public sidewalk in front of it. So for a bar that is situated in a downtown area and there's a public sidewalk that runs in front of it and there's a storefront to the left and a storefront to the right, those kinds of bars, you don't really per se have exterior control because that is in public domain and you can't tell people that they can't be on a public sidewalk. Not even the police can tell people that they can't be on a public sidewalk, only under certain circumstances, like controlling a crime scene, etc. Every, general run of the day, kind of stuff, you just can't tell people they can't be on a public sidewalk. So in that sense, you don't really have exterior control unless it's a property that would have like a back parking lot that customers can park in. Then that would be an area where you would have exterior control. But for the most part, exterior control is going to be for these properties or these bars that are on properties that they have their own parking lot and its parcel or its acreage is, big enough that It's not directly close to a public sidewalk, or its front door is not directly close to a public sidewalk. When it comes to exterior control, the biggest thing is keeping people from loitering outside. The more people who loiter outside, the more problems there's going to be. The more people who loiter outside are going to be drinking in their cars. They're going to be over-serving themselves with alcohol. And because they're drinking in their car, the bar business is losing business at that point. They're not making a profit off someone drinking a beer out in the parking lot. People out there doing drugs, getting themselves overly intoxicated on a narcotic or alcohol, and then them going back inside before a big noticeable physical change can be detected, and then they becoming a problem inside. A bunch of young men hanging out in the parking lot, congregating is never a good thing. It usually just leads to problems. So having those people beat feet and go inside or leave is really important aspect. And sometimes while doing that exterior control and you're coming across people and interacting with them, if those people don't have the right attitude and they're not responding well, they have poor attitudes, then you can identify the troublemakers before they ever get to the front door. You can tell them to get lost. So exterior control can be an important aspect of it. Like I said, keeping people from loitering outside, congregating in large groups outside, drinking in their cars, doing dope outside, whatever. The entertainment is inside the bar. That's where everyone's at. That's where all the fun's at. There is no entertainment out in the parking lot. There's not a bartender out in the parking lot serving drinks. Why the hell do people need to be out in the parking lot? They don't need to be in the parking lot. They want to go hang out in the parking lot, they can drive their ass to Walmart and hang out in that parking lot. Next would be entry control. So this is where probably the most important aspect of security comes into play, is controlling the entry into the bar. And each bar or nightclub can be a little bit different in how that's done. Typically, there's generally at least one person at the door, and at bare minimum, what that one person is doing is checking IDs, making sure that the people coming in there are of age. Aside from checking the IDs, that person can and should also be checking people's attitudes, checking their body language. If a person is showing signs of being overly intoxicated, well, then they don't need to come into the bar, because they're a liability at that point, not just civilly but also criminally. So civilly, they come in, they're too drunk, they fall, hurt themselves, etc. That can cause issues on the civil side. Criminally, if they come in there and they're just completely wasted, if an ABC officer were to come into the bar and see this person, they could give the bar a citation or give a bartender a citation for over serving. And that would be bad for a bartender if they end up getting it. It could end up being bad for the business if they end up getting that, because you get too many of those, you lose your license. And of course, that citation in of itself, can carry a fine. And even if you don't, pay the whole fine and they do a pretrial diversion for you, there could be other little things you got to do. And it's just an annoyance. And you can avoid all that annoyance by not letting in people who are overly intoxicated. People with extremely bad attitudes, just disrespectful as shit, and just assholes. you can check those attitudes at that door. And if people are not having the right attitude, the right mindset to come into a bar, then you can stop that at the door. There are certain people that they don't need to go out and drink. They don't need to drink at all, because when they drink, they get stupid. And you can weed out a lot of people like that at that front door. If someone is going to get a shitty, disrespectful, asshole attitude towards security, the people who are tasked with pulling people out of the bar when they start getting stupid and are tasked with the overall safety and security of that place, if they're going to get that kind of attitude with them, what's to prevent them from getting that attitude with anyone else? There's not. In fact, I would say that if they're going to be like that towards security, then they'll probably be worse towards someone else, and they don't need to come in. If you do good exterior control and good entry control, then you don't have a whole lot to worry about with interior control. A lot of your work should be knocked out for you at the front door. But interior control is still an important aspect. You need to have someone walking around, keeping an eye on things, checking to make sure that people are not becoming overserved. And if they are, cutting them off, letting the bartenders know, hey, this person doesn't need any more drinks. And you can make that decision to let them stay, or if they're in a bad enough state, you can go ahead and get them on out of there. People starting to act aggressive inside, guys starting to peacock towards each other, addressing those issues and solving those problems. Between all those, the difference that can be made is with a proactive security force versus a reactive security force. If it's going to be all reactive kind of people, then nothing's going to get properly done. For exterior control, if it's someone reactive, like they're sitting near the entrance or they're just leaning against the wall playing on their phone, and the only time they go snooping around is when, someone's showing a big bottle and drinking with it, or, they're causing enough of a ruckus for them to go over there, then they're not being proactive enough. They should be constantly moving around, looking for things to get into. Entry control, same thing. They should be very proactive in how they are dealing with the people, checking IDs, being very diligent with the IDs, having the person pull the ID out of their wallet and checking the security features on it, which I have a whole video on fake IDs. I highly recommend you go check it out. But being proactive with the checking out of the IDs and proactive with gauging people's behaviors and body languages. And for the interior, if it's someone who is just going to be leaning up against the wall, playing on their phone, talking to a girl all night, not paying attention to what's going on, well, that can lead to problems, because as they're not paying attention, other things are going on. And if you're proactive, although those things can still happen, the frequency to which they would occur would be a lot lower with a proactive person. So a proactive security team can reduce a lot of problems. And you have to have a sufficient amount of security personnel, or a good ratio of security to patrons. And when you start getting too many patrons, that gets too much for security to handle, then that can start leading to problems. But overall, a good proactive team can keep a property from getting a bad reputation, and it can keep a lot of the bad actors away. When it comes to going back to entry control and even interior control, just the overall management of the property and dealing with behavioral problems, a suspension system for assholes can be instituted. So someone's got a freaking attitude problem, or they're fighting, you can go ahead and suspend them from the bar for a couple weeks or a month. Depending on what it is they've done and whatnot, you can go ahead and tell that person they can't come back for a week or two, and that can have an effect on not just that person but other people, because once they catch wind of like, oh, you mess around, they're not gonna let you come back for a little bit. That can alter people. That can make some people think twice. And what really makes that tactic more effective is if the bar is a hopping place, like it is like the attraction. Because if you tell a person they can't come back for a month, well, that person's going to feel it for a month, especially if they're young and they're into the nightlife. For that whole month, if their friends are going to the most happening place that they just so happen to be banned from for a month, well, life's going to suck for them. And their friends aren't going to stay away from the most popular bar in town just for that one friend. They're still going to go. And so that dude is going to be left by himself, or going to have to go to a crappier bar with someone else and not have as much fun. So it can still work to some degree with a place that's not as popular, but it really helps when the place is super popular and everyone wants to go there. On top of, putting people on timeout, so to speak, or suspending them from the place for a week or something like that, you can just also outright ban people. And there are just some people who will never be capable of going out into a public place and drinking alcohol and be perfectly fine. Like, there are some people, when they get out the public and they start drinking, they become destructive. They become major assholes. And those people don't need to be there. They just need to be outright banned and never allowed to come back. Because too many of those people, if you don't take care of them and get rid of them, then they're going to end up causing a bad image for the property. They're going to give it a bad reputation. One of the other things that makes managing a property from the security standpoint effective is good support from management or the owner of the bar. If a bar doesn't have a good manager that supports their security, then a lot of this stuff is going to be kind of lost, and they're not going to be able to be as proactive as they should be, because there's going to be a manager who doesn't want them harassing people in the parking lot, or being what they would consider overbearing or overzealous or whatever. It also helps when the only people who have a say in what security does is the owner or the manager, and it has to stay like that. You can't have bartenders being able to come out and tell security that, oh, such and such doesn't need this ID, they're 21, I can vouch for them, or, oh no, this person you just caught fighting, they're cool, they're with me, they can stay. Oh, that person that you told you they can't come back next month, they're cool, they're with me, they can stay. You don't need bartenders coming out doing that shit, cocktail waitresses doing that shit, barbacks or DJs or anyone other than the owner. You just don't need people doing that. And even when it comes to the owner and the manager, they need to refrain from doing that. Because when they start vouching for these dumbasses that cause problems, then those people can become emboldened, and it's just a slap in the face to the security team managing that property. And those bad actors can become emboldened to want to do more stuff and become more aggressive because they feel like they're untouchable. I have dealt with that before, many years ago when I was just a regular bouncer, and it annoyed the shit out of me. And it annoyed the shit out of me so much that when I started my security company, in my contract, I stipulate that I have the final say in everything regarding to safety and security. And that, and it also says in the contract that arguing with me is going to void the contract. And so I can, once that happens, I can leave early and still keep the money. And that cuts out a lot of the headache because, like I said, like bartenders and DJs trying to come up and say that such and such is fine, they can come in. That's a problem. You don't need every swinging dick in the building being able to try and dictate what security is going to be doing. Security needs to be the one that's going to be in charge of the security of the building. And DJs, all they do is play music, and that's all they need to be doing. They don't need to be dictating, well, such and such is cool, they can come in. Such and such is, oh yeah, they're 21, I can vouch for them. Now, stay in your lane. The other factor or other variable that comes into play with a good security is having people who are experienced and trained. That is an important aspect as well, because if they are not experienced well or they're not trained well, then they can be a liability. I remember I forgot what year this was, but it was a few years ago, probably more than a few years ago, probably sometime around 2000, between 2015 2017, somewhere around in there. I just can't remember which one. We had there was a concert at the convention center, and my buddy that had the contract there, there was something that he had going on. I forgot what it was. He had told him that there was some kind of miscommunication, and the people who ran the convention center thought that he was not going to be available to do this event, which in the past, he had always been available to do those events. And this company reached out to Securitas. And they reached out to Securitas to do security for a rap event. And this rap event concert, I want to say it was Yo Gotti who was performing at this concert. And so they hired Securitas to come in. Well, Securitas didn't have enough people to meet, how many security they were wanting. And so they reached back out to my buddy and were basically, from what I understand, they're asking if he would, reconsider being able to come out. And he was like, well, why didn't you call me in the first place? So we scrounged up a crew, and it wasn't as many as we would have preferred to have, but, almost last minute notice, you work what you got with. And so we had to work with some of these Securitas people. And these dudes and gals, holy crap, man. Like, one of the dudes looked like he belonged behind the counter at a movie theater popping popcorn. Like, this dude instilled no confidence whatsoever. Like, there was not the least bit of intimidation in this guy. I mean, you could look like you could just, yell boo at him and he would run. Um, and that night, there was I wouldn't say a full loss of control, but where those people were at, um, because of how they were, what would normally be a one-man post or something like that, we had to double them up. That way, they would be more. Um, Trying to even say that they would be more intimidating, it's kind of laughable. But we thought that, doubling them up would increase their chances of people listening to them at these different posts. And these different posts were basically just different entrances and exits to the convention center that weren't to be used. And the manager for that crew had he brought a whole box of pepper spray, and he's in this box of pepper spray. He also had a box of OC canisters, like brand new, um, and he starts giving it to these guys who've had no training whatsoever in pepper spray. And sometime throughout the night, a couple people, they got ejected from inside. I forgot what it was for, but I think it was something to do with like a fight, or they're about to start fighting or something like that. Well, it pops off in the parking lot, and as we're dealing with these people, one of these little Securitas assholes comes up and just starts spraying the fuck out of them with pepper spray, and I get smacked in the face with a stream of pepper spray, and goes across one side of my face, and so one eye is out of commission, and it was, yeah, I wanted to grab that little bastard and strangle him. But that was, I mean, I couldn't imagine what would have happened if it had just been them doing the security for that event. There was no way that they would have been proactive in doing anything. There's no way that they would have stood their ground when it came to searching people and keeping things out. They would have been very, very, very easily intimidated because they had no experience dealing with people. They had no experience or training in anything. I mean, they were they were they they were they were something else. Um, and some places will hire security like that, and it usually ends up being disastrous because no one really pays them any attention. No one really listens to them, and because they kind of know that people aren't going to be doing much with them or listening to them much or whatever. Um, they don't take a proactive approach to things. They're more reactive, and even when being reactive, they don't really react to a whole lot. They just kind of, I think some of them will just kind of let things go instead of going and dealing with it because they're too intimidated themselves to go deal with anything. So you got to have good, experienced, and trained people to deal with the crowds in places like this, because without it, they're not going to be effective. They're not going to do the things that they need to be doing. The proactive approach and having the people with experience and training can make a huge difference in the safety of a nightclub, bar kind of property. I had a contract once at a place that was a hookah bar, and it was a normal hookah bar during the week, but on the weekend it was sort of a nightclub, and they played predominantly rap music and they catered to the crowd that predominantly listens to rap music. And this crowd that came to this location was the same crowd that visited a different location across town, known as Chocolate City. And at that location, bad things happened. There was a guy beat to death. There were shootings out there. Just a bad reputation was at that place. And a lot of the same people who went there came to this hookah place. And at this hookah place, some of the people that I remember coming there, there were people who were known drug dealers, people who were persistent felony offenders, there were some bad people that came there. Not all of them were, but there were some bad people that came there. And the way we managed that property with proactiveness in exterior control, entry control, and interior control, there were 0 fucking shootings at that property. There were 0 major acts of violence at that property. The most that we ever had was some fist fights out in the parking lot. And of the fights that there were, the majority of them were girl fights. Just a bunch of girls having a little cat fight outside. As far as the guys actually getting into a knockdown brawl, I can only think of one outside. And as far as the inside goes, I think there was only one time where some guy got sucker punched inside. And that was it. That was the majority of our problems, was just, something like a simple little bar fight. And I think that is a heck of an accomplishment, especially considering the crowd that I had coming there. Very easily could have been a shootings there. Very easily could have been some very bad things going on there, but we were very proactive with maintaining the parking lot, making sure no one's loitering out there and doing stupid shit, checking people at the door with their attitudes and their bullshit. That right there, in my opinion, really made a major difference in the crowd. When you start getting rid of the bad actors, the bad apples, then everything else is smooth. I remember thinking, you know what? There's not much to do inside the building. We don't have to spend that much time inside the building because we had done such a great job keeping out the riffraff that inside was cake. Someone would pop in and walk around and make a round in there, but everyone else was having a great time, having fun. The people who wanted to go out and have a good time were out having a good time and having a safe time. And the people who wanted to cause problems and be little assholes, well, I don't know where they went, but they went somewhere else and they didn't come in that place. Yeah. Trying to think if there's anything else off the top of my head I was wanting to talk about. Kind of went from a shooting video to talking about managing security in a bar, nightclub kind of venue. Sometimes you never know what I'll talk about. I'll just leave it there. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense, thank you for watching.